Hope here at Crafty Hope, and welcome. Today I'm going to play with the Grafix Craft Plastic in Crystal Clear. I have two different ones. They're different in some way. They're both crystal clear. One is a bit thinner at 0.007 inches and the other one is a little bit thicker at 0.020. Now they both packages have 4 sheets that are 12 inches by 12 inches. So super fun material that you can do a lot with. What I want to do today though is do a couple different things and encase what we've done in some resin molds. So sometimes you can't do everything you want within a resin mold, but maybe you can do it on something like this that's clear and put it in the mold. So some of the things I've pulled out, let's talk about it, are some stamps. I have some that I have hand carved on erasers. I've got some like that I can mount, and I can always pull in. I've got lots of other stamps. I do have, to go with that, some permanent ink, so Staz-ons for the most part, but you could also use an archival ink, but something permanent. I do want you to know too that when you stamp on the crystal clear, there's no tooth to it, so it will slide a bit. So you need to be as careful as possible to stamp on it. But I've also got some permanent markers, so some just regular, like, these are cheap ones, and then I have Sharpie ones. I could also pull in maybe some alcohol-based markers or something like that. And I'm real tempted to also play around with my alcohol inks, like my Ranger alcohol inks as well, to color some of these. In addition, I have resin molds. I've got molds that I've made myself with some of the what do you call it? Amazing mold? Or I can't remember what it's called. But it's like a putty you mix together to create a silicone mold. I've got a couple of the Blue Moon molds. These are clear and really intended for UV resin. That's why they're so crystal clear. But 2-part epoxy resin, which is what I'm planning on using, works fine in them as well. And then I have, these are molds just from Dollar Tree. Now that I went and bought a second set of these, so I can make like these for earring dangles, so I could make matching ones at the same time. But this one, I just have the one up. So lots of molds. I have more I could bring in if I want. But really with these, I was looking for ones with nice open spaces that we can put our craft plastic in. So that was the idea with these. So the ones I pulled out, as you can see, have lots of open spaces to put things in. So I'm going to put those aside and start by just playing with the craft plastic. Now the thinner one, the 0.007, comes with a tissue paper in it to separate the plastic, but the thicker one, the 0.020, it has a film on either side of it. So I think that's part of the reason I'm really excited about that one is because you can keep it kind of matte so you can see it while working on it. Anyway, I'm being chatty. Let's get to playing. I'm excited to jump in and play. The first thing I did was create a template of my molds. I am using just some distress ink because I can clean that off really easy, and lightly tapping on the underside of these molds, so not the recessed portion but the back. And this works great on these Dollar Tree ones because it's more exposed. And then I'm going to very carefully put it just on some copy paper and lightly press it without moving it around. And that is going to give me a great template of the shape and size of these to work with. I also use this to help me figure out what I'm going to do for the layering of these, because I'm going to do quite a bit of layering. Now I did a ton of molds. You'll see all of them at the end. I'm only going to show you a few of them and some of the different things you can do with them. And the simplest of this is to take your permanent ink pad and a stamp and stamp directly onto your craft plastic. Again, try to make a firm and even press on there so it doesn't go slipping around. And if you work quickly after you stamp this, you can wipe it up. Also, with a lot of these permanent inks, alcohol will take them up. And then once I get it stamped, I am coloring in the back side of my stamp with a permanent marker. So if you do it on the front side, you can likely mess up that initial stamp, but if you do it on the back, nothing's going to move around. So that's what I'm doing on here, just coloring these two. And as you can see, I'm working on almost all of these I'm working on all of these in pairs, because if I want to turn them into earrings, then I have two, and if one messes up, then I have a backup, that kind of thing. So you can see I am simply using these, and these are super cheap markers to color in the back side of these. Now I will say that once I put the resin in, this green color does not show up. It is really, you can't really see it here either. It's just a super pale marker. So once I get them all colored in, I'm going to, for these in particular, I'm going to fussy cut around the shape of the stamp, because that fits nicely underneath the little prong that creates the hole for the resin. So I am, as I'm working, I'm putting these in the molds. They are not going to stay there. It was just to help me sort where things are going. So one of the ones I am going to use though is this moon face stamp. So as you can see, I've stamped it, and then I can take it and place it over the mold like this to kind of get the shape and the idea of how it's going to fit into that mold. Now this one, like the mushroom one, I'm actually not I'm going to cut around where the little prong thing is, because I don't need it to be in that top portion, because I'm keeping this clear. But you saw I just took one of those permanent markers and used that template I had stamped to kind of draw where the area that I wanted it to be around. Yeah, draw around the area I wanted it to be. So I got those in my molds, and then I moved to the thicker craft plastic, the 0.020, and I'm just showing you that you can cut it down pretty easy with some scissors. I'd cut that long strip in half, and then I am pulling up just one side of this craft plastic. Now some of these techniques I learned in the video here on the graphics channel from Denise Lush. So yeah, there are other ways to use this craft plastic. I encourage you to go check out that video. So she did this where she just peeled off one side of that film and then played with her alcohol inks, and I thought, oh, that's great. It will keep that backside clean until you're ready to peel it off. I loved that tip. So that's exactly what I did, and I took some of my favorite colors, blues and purples and a bit of brown, and this one, y'all, I didn't do great with this because I didn't experiment, so I'm going to put this, I don't remember the color, it's a silver mixative on here, and it doesn't really move around as much as I want. So I'm going to grab a Q-tip and just kind of pull it around. I was trying to get some of that to move, see if I'm going to even spray it. I've got a bit of alcohol in the spray bottle that I'm going to spritz on there. Oh, first I decided to add some green. That's what I did. Added a little more green. And I did do 2 sheets of this, and I don't think I ever ended up using the other one in the charms you're going to get to see. So I spritzed that didn't move. See, that dried just like that. So I took a Q-tip, and while everything was kind of still a little tacky and wet, I'm just going to move that Q-tip around the alcohol inks, and yeah. And it's different, but it's going to end up working just fine for the way I'm going to use it in these art charms. So, oh yeah, I got a little messy. So I did put that aside and let it dry, and then I do peel off the back at some point. I don't know if I'm going to show that to you. Y'all aren't going to see it at all. So I'm showing you now how I layered some of these. I did another stamping with the Staz-on the thinner craft plastic and these little crows, I guess, birds, I don't know. And I'm going to put that, cut it so that prong isn't there. But then I'm going to take that alcohol inked 0.020 and cut it the same size as my as my mold. Now I am going to recommend, especially with this thicker craft plastic, cut it smaller than your mold. I had the ones that bubbled up for me, well, any of this craft plastic actually, cut it a little bit smaller than your mold, because I was able to get these in the molds pretty easily without the resin in there. But once I poured the resin started setting, they were not fitting in the molds quite as well. So I do encourage you to cut them just a little bit smaller than your molds. It was a lesson I had to learn that I'm hoping that you just know now. I am using my Crop-a-dile to punch a hole where that pronged piece is, so that and you can see me punch 3 times, because some of these have like elongated prongs instead of just a single punch, a single hole. So I used my template there to know what layers I wanted, which ones I was going to have clear, which ones were layered with some of the other pieces, and which ones were going to have like glitter and stuff added to them. Now I have a 2-part epoxy resin here, so there's a part A and a part B. I encourage you that if you're going to use a 2-part resin like this, follow the instructions that are on the resin you get. Mine is most of them in fact are a 1-to-1 like ratio. So you take 2 of the same amounts and mix them together. Mine has to mix for 5 minutes, so that's what I'm going to do. You're not going to see that. I mix them in a 1/3 cup. I like these little paper cups because I can bend them to help pour it, but that's just a me thing. So definitely follow the instructions for how long they need to mix. And this one also has a 30-minute working time, and that is great since I was going to do all this layering and adding of things. So as you can see, I've got all of my stuff laid out, and I am putting my resin in my molds, and I'm going to use my popsicle stick to kind of push that resin to all the edges of the mold, and that'll make sure it's getting a first layer down. Now you can see that other mold up there at the top. I tried to do this with some UV resin, but I think I did not cut that thicker craft plastic down small enough, and I had lots of lots of big bubbles in there. Once you get your first layer in there, push to all the edges, I like, especially if you're using a silicone mold, I like to take a lighter and go over all of it, and that will help pop the bubbles that are in there. You can do this a couple times, like go over it, let it sit for a second, and go back over it. Because especially after mixing it that much, you're going to get a lot of bubbles in there. So for the ones that are going to stay clear, like the mushroom, and then I've got another one where I stamped a butterfly onto the thicker plastic, I'm going ahead and putting those in. I think I'm putting them all in actually. So when I put in my craft plastic, I am pressing it down completely into the resin to make sure there are no big air gaps underneath it. So I encourage you, if you do this, push it in there. If you won't wear gloves, make sure you don't get any resin on your fingers. Now I let this sit overnight and came back to it. Mine has to set for like 12 hours. So I left it, and then I came back and did up a second batch of the resin. So I'm going to do the same procedure. I'm not going to make you watch me do it again, but I wanted for the transition for all of us. I did have one that I decided at the last minute to put some paper in there, which I've just painted some acrylic paint on both sides of a book page that I'm going to stick in there. And these are actually I'm going to show you how to alter how we're going to use them. So once you get kind of that mixed up and ready to go, that was a last minute decision there while my resin was sitting. I'm going to start adding my second layer of resin to everything. So I'm again putting it in each of the molds and then using my popsicle stick to help spread it out. You could use a cheap paintbrush too if that's more your style. So again, some of them are just getting, I think that one that I'm working on there and the mushroom one are the only ones that are going to be like clear backs basically. Then I have some paper that it's just yeah, there. It's just some copy paper that I put crackle paste on and inked it up. And that, again, when I put this in there, I'm going to push it down and make sure it makes complete contact. Now, these with the birds and the second layer of the alcohol craft plastic, we're going to also be using those. I wanted you to see I'm putting it in there. I'm using a clean popsicle stick to press it down really well into that layer of resin. One of them ended up bubbling, and I think that's because it was a little too large for my mold, but we only need one, so that's fine. Once all of those are pressed into your molds, you're going to put another layer of resin to fill up the mold and complete these and seal that second layer you've put in there. And this is one of the benefits of using the two-part resin and not the UV resin, because some of these things the UV light wouldn't be able to get through. So first I wanted y'all to see, I did do, while the resin was, before it was cured, after it was just poured, one of these, when I put that second layer of resin on top, I decided to come in with some more alcohol inks, and I am dripping those in there. From what I've seen on this technique, you really need to have like either some kind of mixative. The white seems to work really great with it, and I'm no expert. I'm sure there are tons of videos here on YouTube about adding alcohol inks to resin to get a fun technique, but I know that this white one really does add a lot to it, gives it some depth. So I grabbed a toothpick to kind of help move that around, because that one drop was quite a bit. And then I'm going to add a bit more resin to the top of that, which does help disperse it a bit more also. So then I did add what the resin I had left in my cup. I split it up into 2 cups and put glitter in one of them. Well, actually, I put 2 different kinds of glitter in each of the 2 cups. And, but yeah, you can see all that at the end. It was just a lot of experimenting. This was so much fun, playing with the different things that you can do with the craft plastic. Like, you can stamp different patterns on each side of the craft plastic to get a different layered effect. You can draw onto the plastic or color it with your alcohol markers, or you can color on the back of the stamped image, like I did. Just so many different things. And then the way you layer these up with either papers or glitters or more different stamped craft plastics is just such, I don't know, the possibilities with this, y'all. I really could have kept playing. This video was like 3 hours long when I I brought it into my editing program. So yeah, I played for quite a bit. So once I get that last layer in there, I am going back over it again with my lighter, and y'all, I left it to set. It was so hard because popping these out to get a good look at them is one of my favorite things. So then I unmolded, and you see these just pop out nicely. That's one of my favorite ones there. So I went through and pulled them all out, and next I'm going to show you what I'm going to do with several of them. We're going to make a pair of earrings and also a journal charm. So, and that's, I think I've got that in real time for you to see. So we're first going to use the ones that I layered with that, and I've got a bead, an ear wire, and a piece of 22 gauge wire. I am taking that wire in through the hole at the top of this, leaving a pretty short end, bending that upwards, and then crossing the wires. Now the short end I'm going to bend straight out toward me like that, and the other one is going to go straight up. So the one that is that short end, we're going to wrap around the long end. You can hold that with pliers, hold that triangle below it with pliers if that's easier. But just wrap it about 2 or 3 times, and then trim off any excess with wire cutters, and take a pair of chain nose pliers and just tuck down that cut end. Then I'm going to add a bead to it just like that, and then make a wrapped loop, which is similar to what we just did. But first we're going to make a bend in the wire. I'm going to take my round nose pliers and bend it. It's going to go in the same direction as our charm so that when it hangs straight. So there's that. There's a little gap between the bead and where that bend is. I'm going to put those round nose pliers there and make a loop around my round nose pliers just like that. There, you can see that loop. And then I'm going to reposition my pliers and wrap underneath. So I'm going to take that tail and wrap it all the way down to the bead. And I'm making a thick wrap, so I'm going to wrap back up a little bit before I trim off that excess and use my chain nose pliers once again to kind of tuck that end down so there's nothing poking up. I think I grabbed my round nose pliers first and was like, no, that's not the right pliers. My camera, I think, was having trouble focusing for some reason on this. There we go. So I'm tucking all that in. And since I've just got these little easy earring, I can't think what they're called. Oh my gosh, y'all, I should know. I think they're called like kidney ones, but I'm not positive. I just slip those on, and then super easy earrings just like that with just a bead and some wire and some earring findings. Easy peasy. Next, I've got this bird charm that we layered with 2 different types of the craft plastic. And I've got some beads with some larger holes in it, a bulb clip, and some wax linen cord. So I'm taking probably just over a foot of that wax linen. I did pull it to make sure it didn't need to stretch. And then just like the wire, we're taking it through that hole, and now I'm going to tie a knot. I'm going to do a surgeon's knot, so that's basically going through once and then twice and then pulling it tight, and then I'll just do a simple overhand knot on top of that. I thought I was going to add some beads to that part that hangs off that tail, but I didn't quite have enough to put a bead on and tie a knot, so I'm going to end up just trimming it and then add on a couple of beads. So I've got this little, a little E-bead on there, and then I think a plastic crystal looking bead. I didn't like that one. So I've got this one that I'm just going to add on, and then on top of it, I'm going to make another knot. So I think this is probably going to be another surgeon's knot. Nope, just a regular overhand knot. I guess that hole wasn't too big. Oh, no, I'm going to do a double knot there because that hole was bigger than I thought it was. So from there, I'm going to tie it on to, oh, I had that upside down. So all you see is the back. There we go. There's our bird with the layer of alcohol ink on behind him. So I'm going to tie this on to that bulb pen. And y'all, one of the benefits of doing the alcohol ink on to the craft plastic is then I got to pick exactly which part of that alcohol ink effect that I liked the most, and it was less of a surprise, but still super fun. So I did do a surgeon's knot to tie the wax linen cord onto the bulb pen there. And then with the tail of it, I can add more beads and dangles. So if you wanted to have like a whole ton of them, you could tie a ton of these charms and beads onto that bulb pen. So here I am doing another overhanded knot. Sorry, I went off. No, a surgeon's knot. Sorry, y'all. I did so many different knots on him because it's all just the same technique. It's just a knot. If you need to make 2 knots on top of each other, that works too. So I made that knot so that the beads wouldn't slide all the way up to the bulb pen. And I'm going to put 1 bead on and then tie, I'm off camera again. I'm going to tie a quick knot there and then slide 2 more beads on, kind of making sure my wax linen has a point to it so I can get those beads on there. And then I'll tie 1 last knot before trimming off my wire. And I have a clip for my journal or for anything else. Really, you could put it on a gift tag, or I don't know, pretty much anything. It's a great little charm and something you've personalized. Like I said, you could draw one I put the alcohol inks into the resin. I had drawn faces on that one with just my markers. It was a lot of fun to just doodle and know that that's going to be like a permanent charm. It was super fun. So anyway, I hope these techniques have inspired you, that you go check out graphicsarts.com and all the products that they have there. If you have any questions, definitely let us know. And I've got some images for y'all here at the end so you can get a better look at all the charms that I made. Thanks so much for coming by and watching, and I will see y'all later. Bye.